Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Siouxland Senior Planning Radio Show. I'm Ethan Huizenga, your host, and today we're going to spend some time discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly of life estates. By the end of today's episode, you should be able to identify what a life estate is, understand how they work. You should be able to identify when life estates are helpful, and you'll also know when it might not help you to have a life estate in place. To start with, let's define life estate. A life estate is a legal arrangement where a person receives property, becomes the owner of a piece of property, but subject to the rights of another person. We sometimes describe that life estate as a division of the property ownership. There are lots of ways to own property. You can own property as joint tenants, you can own property as tenants in common, and you can own property as a life tenant and a remainderman. I will explain those terms in just a second, but just remember that a life estate is a way or a method of owning property. Property ownership, when you learn about that in law school, they teach us analogy that can be helpful in this case. They describe property ownership as a bundle of sticks. And for each right or each power or authority that you have with respect to a piece of property, that right or power is identified as a stick in the bundle. And if your bundle of sticks were to be broken in half, and half of the bundle of sticks was the present day powers and rights to that property, the other half of the bundle would be the future powers and rights to the property. And that's what a life estate is. It divides the property ownership, not as a percentage per se, but as a sort of present day interest and a future interest. The life tenant, which is the person that owns the property during the present, has full control and power, authority, everything that you could possibly think of with respect to the property that person owns, but only as long as they're alive. When that person dies, their life estate ends and they no longer own the property. It passes automatically and completely to the remainderman, which is the person that owns the future interest in the property. And once that happens, the remainder holder, that remainderman, owns the property completely. There is no limit. There's no other owner. It's the remainderman or several of them, the remaindermen, are the full, complete owners of the property. So a life estate can be a way, one way that it's beneficial is it can help you pass your real estate in most cases without having to put that property through the probate process. It's an automatic change. Life estates can be created a couple of ways. You can create a life estate by retaining that life estate where, for example, if you took your home and you gave it to your children now, they would own the remainder interest as long as you retain the life estate. You retain the use of that property for your life. So that's how you create a life estate for yourself. But you can also receive a life estate, and that happens when someone dies and gives it to you through their will. This happens fairly often when we see second marriages. In the will, maybe one of the spouses wants to leave the home where they live to the surviving spouse, but they then want it to go to their own children after the surviving spouse dies. So they leave it to the surviving spouse in life estate, and then the remainder goes to their children, the surviving spouse's stepchildren. And that way they can guarantee that the surviving spouse has a place to live, but that their own children inherit that property. And that works really well for avoiding probate, but it can also create some issues. Because when you create a life estate and a remainder, you have now given that property to two different owners. And so if the life tenant wants to sell the property, they have to get approval from the remainder holders. Another issue that you have to solve when you have a life estate and a property is sold is the division of the proceeds upon the sale. And not only the proceeds, but also the tax liability if there's a gain that's realized when the property is sold. So you both have to split the proceeds of the sale price, and you have to allocate the taxes from the sale. So there's some issues there as far as control and who gets the benefit of the funds because we have multiple owners. Life estates also create problems when we start dealing with nursing home care and in particular how we are going to pay for that care if we're looking at potentially applying for Medicaid or Title 19. Medicaid says that anything a person owns is considered available to them if they can sell it or cash it out in some way. And they define a life estate as an asset that you could sell. The life tenant owns something, there's an ownership interest there, and Medicaid says that there's a value assigned to that interest. How we deal with that value is based on the age of the person who holds the life estate. Their life expectancy is based on their age, and so we can look at a table published by the state of Iowa in their Medicaid manual to determine what percentage of that value, the total fair market value, is assigned to the life tenant. Essentially what that means is the life tenant, even when a property is held in life estate and they're in a nursing home and very likely to die soon, at least compared to the average person, that individual's interest in the life estate still has a fairly sizable value. In some cases, the value can be as much as 40 or 50% of the total. So for a property that's worth $100,000, you may have a value of the life estate that's as high as $40,000 or $50,000. And if that asset is a countable resource under the Medicaid rules, then the life estate is very likely going to keep you from getting Medicaid benefits unless you are able to overcome that presumption of the value. So those are the issues that come along with having a life estate. There's some good things that you can do with a life estate as well. And that's all I've got for you today. Remember, if you have questions, you can submit them through the Sioux County Radio website, or you can head over to our website for the show, SiouxLandSeniorPlanning.com/listener. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next week.